What happens when women lead? How do advancements for women help make cities more inclusive for all? To discuss the role of women in global cities, please welcome Moderator Niamh King, non-resident fellow at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, Ebtesam Al-Ketbi of the Emirates Policy Center, Laura Schumacher of AbbVie, Ambassador of Sweden to the United States, Karin Olofsdotter, and member of the Assembly of the Republic of Kosovo, Mimoza, Kusari, Lila.
Good morning, everybody. What a delight to be here. Thank you for all the great conversations over the last day and a half. And I'm honored and delighted to be moderating our first panel in the 5 years of the Pritzker Forum on Women and Cities, entitled When Women Lead. And what a terrific panel we have today. And every one of them has a first that they can tell us about in their careers. I'm going to start today with Karin Olofsdotter, who was the first female Swedish ambassador to the US. And we know you're all avid FT readers, but she had an op-ed in the Chicago Tribune this week, which talks a little bit about the landscape of Sweden and women who lead. And I'd love if you kicked us off and told us a little bit about how it works in Sweden with women and progress, and in your role in particular.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. And we were very honored that the article was published in the Tribune, so we'll come back every week on a new topic. No, but for Sweden, of course, gender issues has been high on the agenda for quite a long time. But it was in 2014 that the government which was then elected, decided it would be the first feminist government in the world. It's actually led by a man, so that's a good thing. What happened then was that all legislation, all proposals that comes out of the government has to have a gender analysis. And of course, gender issues don't apply to all issues, but it should at least be a conscious analysis of where does it apply and what can we then do to enhance equality in the society. And from this also stems that we then have a feminist foreign policy. That implies that when we look at foreign policy, we always have to take into account the role of women. And my foreign minister has identified 3 R's: rights, representation, and resources for women. And that's really what it's all about. And I think given that we are on a conference that's dealing with cities and urbanizations, that is very important when we also construct cities, we rebuild cities. What do we do to enhance equality in infrastructure, in the way we do housing, safety to walk, etc.? And that will also increase the economic impact. It will make it easier for women to work, to go around themselves, and so on. So it impacts all of society, actually.
Yeah, and I think those 3 R's are working because you have the highest female labor force participation in the EU, right? 80%?
Yes, 80% of
That's
female employment rate.
Great, thanks. And now we'll move to Mimoza. Mimoza is a female parliamentarian in Kosovo, in Pristina, and she was the first mayor. She went from her town of Gajova. Am I saying it correctly?
Jakova.
Yeah, exactly. And now she is in parliament. And she interestingly told me in the green room, because we were talking about how do you get women involved earlier in leadership and making them believe that they can win. And she's a big fan of women running. And the first time she ran, she lost. And she learned a lot from that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey from not a losing mayor, but somebody who put up a fight and then got it the second time around, and now you're in parliament.
Well, actually, losing is part of the game as well. And I think more that we talk about women engagement, we should talk also about the fact that struggle means losing and winning. And what I realized is the first time when I entered politics, I entered because I wanted to become a mayor. And not because I wanted to be in politics, but I felt that with my business background, with an MBA from US, I can contribute to my city, which was the most devastating during the last war in Kosovo, had the highest number of people lost, and a lot of economic losses. So my belief was that I can contribute directly in local management. And the first election in 2009, this is 10 years now that I've entered politics, I lost. And it was a bitter loss because it was very much contested with a fraud associated with the election process and a lot of other things. But then you realize that if this is what you want to do, you have to keep going. And I came back in 2013. In between, I also participated in general elections. But my point before talking was that we have to talk to women in politics that losing and being defeated by men rules is fine as long as you don't give up.
Yeah.
And it's not about, I've been portrayed back home as saying, oh, she's a strong woman. And when I count, generally you have more defeats than victories. But it's the defeats that makes you strong, it's not the victory. Victory gives you an overwhelming joy and the feeling that, yes, I'm strong and I can govern. But when you lose, you actually realize what your real strength is. Because then you have to collect all the pieces within you and stand up again. And I think this mechanism lacks with women in politics, because when women are defeated, everyone is like, yeah, see, she's not right for the office. You know, that's why you should sort of step away and leave this, because this is a man's job. It's not. Because we got so used to having men winning, losing, doesn't matter because they're there all the time. And this is why I keep saying we need to be there. Women need to participate. And my main focus also now in Parliament of Kosovo is increasing the number of women, even though introducing quota in business corporation at the board, because you have to give them a chance so they're there. And when they make a mistake, it's fine, because men make mistakes all the time as well, and no one's judging them as harsh as they judge women. But definitely, I've seen my role being the first and only woman mayor ever to be elected in Kosovo. I've seen my role as very important because of the sort of attention that women have on a lot of topics and cities that men oftentimes lacks, in particular in my part of the region, in Balkans, when there is still more conservative societies or societies that have come from communist regime to now an open democracy, that they've realized that, you know, only infrastructure and, as I used to call it, hardware. But then there's a lot of other issues on software, on a lot of different policies like transparency, good governance, accountability, that I thought they were very important with the city that I was running. And I was all the time working with youth, with women, marginalized group, and other work categories to actually bring them to the point that you realize that everyone needs to have a seat at the table.
Yeah, that's right. And I think just to add a point on about the Swedish feminist foreign policy, it's not to the exclusion of men, it's having everybody
absolutely.
at the table. So now we'll move to Dr. Ebtesam. She runs the Emirates Policy Center. She's one of the 50 most influential women in the Gulf, in addition to all kinds of other accolades that she has. And I think most people in the world are very interested in Arab women, and you've been really successful. You have a PhD, you were the first woman to run a think tank. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and what made you able to overcome some of the barriers to success that women in your region face?
The faith in yourself first. You know, the main problem for women that they don't believe in themselves. Okay, they always look to themselves, they are second. Men should be the first. I'm talking about my region. This is how they've been raised, that at the end, you will go to be a housewife. So no matter whatever you get, you will be the second. So priority should be for the boy. And of course, my mother, she wasn't educated. And she wanted her daughter to get the highest degree. She was always pushing me to continue. When I went to Cairo University, get my bachelor, then master, then PhD, and then when I came, I was teaching at UA University. And then after 10 years of teaching, because I love research, then I thought that why not to establish a think tank which is different than what we have in the Arab world. A think can really change the decision making and the decision maker view. It wasn't easy because I always have a loud voice because this is my nature. I cannot be a hypocrite or see something wrong and just keep silent. So it wasn't also because when I established my think tank, it's on following the development in the geopolitics and its impact on our region. So I have to give a recommendation for decision makers coming from independent sides. So how to convince those which I used to oppose them. One day, it wasn't easy. Men, more than women, fought me. Kind of a lot of jealous from my colleague because we are few in the politics okay? So looking to a woman coming to this area and looking down to her, what she's going to do. And of course, it's different. Yes, women are empowered in my region, but it's different when you achieve what you achieve by yourself. It's not something given to you by the government, right? So I'm always saying, rights is not a gift. You have to take it by yourself. So I was struggling first year. I think when you came first to my conference, we were just complete only 1 year. And everybody was asking, how old this think tanks? I was saying, it's just 1 year. Everybody was looking at me, 1 year? You put yourself on the world map. I said, yes. It's not about how many years. It's about if you have a vision and you know where are you going. You know the road map. So it's not about you are, everybody looking to me, she's a strong woman. I'm not strong.
Oh, well, I'm not sure about that.
Men think that. I am a believer in what I am doing. If you are believing in what you are doing and you keep following, there are many, I won't say that, I always say that we have in the region tanks, but we don't have things.
Oh, okay. Wow, there you go. Little defense policy for you. Laura, I'd love to move to you to hear about the private sector. So Laura is the Chief Legal Officer, and she's Vice Chairman of External Affairs for AbbVie, one of our sponsors. Thank you for your support.
You're
and
welcome.
she's also, in addition to everything she does over there, she's on the board of General Dynamics, which is an aerospace and defense industry leader, as you know. So we were just chatting about, like, how did you get where you are? And I was a little surprised, you know, to find out that she's on General Dynamics board. It's also a firm run by women. And, you know, tell the audience what you enlightened me about backstage about thinking about women's fortes in private sector and how they thrive.
Well, so we were talking a little bit about the defense industry, and she said, well, the defense industry is kind of an unusual place for women, isn't it? And if you really think about that, what you're saying is, well, the defense must be a manly thing because it's, you know, it's war and it's heavy equipment and it's submarines and tanks, which it is in terms of product lines. But if you think about what it is to actually be a successful and good leader in that industry, it's really about connectivity, relationship building with your customer. You have a customer, basically, which is the US government and the armed services. And I think women are uniquely able to build those relationships and maintain those relationships over time, which isn't to say men can't do that, but is to say that to some extent I think it plays to a lot of the things that are innate strengths in women. There are other issues in industries like that, in defense and to some extent a little bit in pharmaceuticals, which is my own industry. You know, women lag behind men in STEM education. And engineering is the primary sort of educational background in the defense industry as a general statement. And so getting at how do we increase representation, part of it is we have to get to where can we really make impacts, and part of that is encouraging and supporting women in STEM and encouraging the pursuit of career paths that might otherwise seem male. But at the end of the day, women are as equipped as men to pursue those paths. And so anything we can do, I think, as women, as leaders, to try to encourage other women to go with their strengths and to follow their passions and not be stereotyped one way into a man's industry or a man's educational pursuit, but actually pursuing, you know, education and the innate qualities that make you a leader. Those are gender neutral. And anything we can do to help that, I think, is a real positive to getting to a parity position for women.
Do you have any specific programs at AbbVie that work around mentorship or something that you think has just changed, moved the needle on getting women into leadership positions in your company?
We have a number of programs to help to develop women. We have a Women's Leadership Initiative, which is a development program where we take a cohort of 25 mid-level women and we try to give them some of the tools and try to create networks for them But I really think it's not about fixing women or having special woman programs. Really, what we do and what I personally do in the functions that I oversee is I try to create opportunities for talent to advance, and talent that doesn't matter whether they're man or whether they're women. It's all about their talent and their ability. And I think taking a long-term perspective over a person's career is enormously helpful, creating opportunities, recognizing that, perhaps if a woman has a little baby, maybe there are some constraints during those few years, but a career spans a lifetime and it doesn't span a couple years. And so I think creating opportunities, putting role models in place, giving women the hope and the tools to say, yeah, I can do it. If she can do it, I can do it. I think that goes way, way further than any sort of developed, institutionalized women's development program.
Great. So we're at a cities conference, so I'm going to switch it over to Karin again. Oh, actually, if you haven't been to the Swedish Embassy in DC, it's beautiful. I was at a conference there last week. It's right down in the Potomac, and we had a great conversation about climate change in the EU. So Sweden does well on lots of metrics, parliamentarian representation in Sweden, but you admitted to me, and since we're talking about losses making you stronger, that on the municipal level, you're not doing well.
No.
What's happening there, and what are you doing to rectify it?
When it comes to representation on the political level, on a national level, it's about 50-50 in our parliament. Yeah. But on a municipal level, so if we look at mayors, for instance, it's only 30% of the mayors in Sweden that are women. And also the representation is much lower in our local assemblies. And actually, I think it is, I don't know why. Maybe it is so that we have focused much more on the national level, the individual political parties. They don't do quotas, it's all voluntarily. So usually, for instance, the Social Democrats have every other person should be of the other sex on their party list. And that has become the norm on our national level, but it's not done yet on the local level. I don't think we've put the spotlight on the local level yet. And also coming back to policies and what you talked about, one of the things that I think is really helping in Sweden is that we have very long parental leave. Yeah. So it's both parents can divide 480 days together and with payment. I mean, you have like 80% of your payment up to a certain level. So for most people, actually, you have 80% of your salary for that long. And the idea is, and 3 months are dedicated to the one parent. If the one parent don't take those 3 months, they are lost. So this is also a way to make it possible for both men and women and be home with their kids. And it's not a stigma in the workplace that you are away from work for half a year or a year. It's part of who we are. And I think this is really something in the long term that will also both help men and women to, go up the career ladder. It's not the stigma that you have kids. It's normal, and I think that's important. But I think the local level politicians, that is really a challenge. And I think it is because it also is something you do in your free time. So maybe it is that we are still doing so much more of the household work than men, for instance. I think this plays into it. Women feel that they don't have the time and energy probably to go into local politics to the same extent because of this unpaid, for instance, household work that we do.
Yeah, okay, great. And Mimoza, you were telling me earlier that there's some great work going on in urban planning and city planning in Kosovo that brings women into thinking about how you do that. Can you tell us some specific examples there? And
Well, engagement of women in city planning, it's much higher than the engagement of women in policy level in terms of the decision making. So there's a number of architects and urban planners that are women, but I've encountered oftentimes the mental barrier of women on running and governing. My experience as a mayor of municipality of Jakova, it has been that once I became a mayor, there is also from women a higher expectation because people think that if you are women and you are strong and you've come this far, then you have to perform much better than men. So not only that you have the heavy burden of breaking the glass ceiling, but then the expectations of people are much higher on women. And on the first fault, on the first failure, you say, see, because you're a woman, you're failing. That is the first that I've encountered being in a position, and this is the position that I got after I was also holding a ministerial position before becoming a mayor. So mayor and local governance has been much harder, and this is why I understand that Sweden has a lower number of mayors than number of parliamentarians or ministers. Then the second thing is that I see very important for every woman who's governing or who got into power is encouraging and empowering other women around her. My experience also in municipality of Jakova was that when I was the first 2 years, I had about out of 12 directors, which are municipal heads, only 3 were women. After 2 years, from 12, 6 were women, 6 were men. And it was not because I wanted to do equality, it was because these women earned those positions. And it's not only on education, on health. I had a woman who ran public services, and I had a woman who ran the inspectorate, which is the inspecting the illegal construction work that was doing. And they were perfect. And what I've seen is that if you remove barriers for women, they can do equally perfect job or even better than quite a lot of men. And it's not about the strength or the force or the courage, because women have those well, but only the belief and open the sort of the pathway. And I'm very proud of the fact that when I finished my term, there was full equality, and it was also believed that these young women, because 2 of them were fairly young and had the most delicate sort of segments of the executive branch at the local level, were one of the most successful. And I see, and I've realized, and I've come to the point to say that, okay, well, one element for women is, yes, you have to run despite the defeats and despite everything that we encounter with men around us. And then the second, when you get that chance, you encourage other women. Because only by increasing the number of women, we can actually have statistically proven data whether the women govern better than men or they're equal. Now, oftentimes we say women govern better, are more transparent, are more efficient, but then what's the data we have? Worldwide, we have less than 10% of cities run by women mayors. And in general, we have in every country huge discrepancies. But maybe those women mayors are more effective, but still in numbers they cannot be comparable because men always outnumber women in leading position. So continuing to actually be a strong voice and encourage women to run and participate. We've also now in the parliament trying to have additional policies, and we've just established a Green Caucus group. And I'm the chair of that group. And I've seen that also a lot of discussions that deal with mobility plan or with environment. It's not only about technicalities, it's also about equality in societies. Because when you have a proper mobility plan, when you have, like we've done gender budgeting. My municipality was the first one to do gender budgeting. And people were saying, well, infrastructure, everyone gains the same. I was like, no. If you do the city lighting, women would have higher benefits because women then get the courage to go to school and they don't leave school, they don't drop out of school. We still have a problem of girls, in particular in a marginalized group, dropping out at high school. Women tend to apply for jobs because it's safe for them to walk on the street when there is a light, when there's a paved road. So there is a very specific components in the cities that brings to equality. And these investments are very important to have a focus. What is gender budgeting and how much that investment from the city planning affects inequality in the city? We don't pay those attention oftentimes, or it doesn't come in discussion. I was asking parliamentarian question last year to our Minister of Finance, and he was like, how can you ask me about gender budgeting? Everyone equally benefits. I'm like, no, Minister, I'm sorry. It's not equally benefiting. It's what it is that you encourage more women to come to equality, because we are not equal now. And we need more additional measures, even when it's come to the investment, to actually come to that point of equality.
Great. Did you want to add something, Lila?
I was only going to say, look, at the end of the day, if we can endeavor to get more women into leadership positions, whether they be in cities, in government, in industry, then I think we have a greater ability to influence other women, to remove those inherent obstacles like you have to work twice as hard, or of course you lost because you're a woman, or the kinds of negative associations don't exist for women looking at other women. They look at other women and they say, all right, where are the skills, where are the talents, let's create opportunities. And we don't have preconceived notions about what you should or shouldn't do or how you should or shouldn't be judged. And so I do think it's an imperative, really, for all of us, no matter where we are, to try to look at what do we do to encourage, to remove obstacles, and to try to support the advancement of women, not just attracting them in the first place, but advancing them to decision-making levels where they can really have a big impact. And I think, at the end of the day, it's not just about equality. The best decisions will be made when the whole representation is present, right? When it's just a single segment making a decision, it's not going to be the same decision as when you have a diverse slate of opinions. And so cutting women out of decision-making processes, it's not going to be the best decision because you're missing a component.
May I add something? It's also not about a woman as a leader. Does those women really empower the other women, or they just stay where they are and that's it? It's not about encouraging the others by you are a role model for them. Also, you have to do something to empower the other women's rights, to get them to that position. This is to raise their awareness that they should take this is which I see that we only measure how many women they are having seats in the decision making. We don't have that measurement. What did those do to empower other women to get their rights, to get their positions?
That's right. So we'll move out to the audience for questions. We have about 4.5 minutes left. So if you have a question, please raise your arm and there'll be a mic coming to you. Yeah, right here in the second row, please. Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin Breitfelder. I've done some work marketing to women focused on empowering female business leaders. And so I've gone to a few events focused on that. And what I'm kind of shocked to see is there are no men in the room. Like often I'll be the only man, or maybe there's a couple of other men there. Are there, I guess my question is, are there some opportunities to engage men as collaborators?
Well, I mean, I'm going to just say a big yes, but I know you want a more comprehensive answer than that, so I'll turn it over to the panel.
It took a male Swedish prime minister to declare a feminist government. So I think you're onto something. It is, of course, extremely important that it doesn't become exclusive for us for women, because that's not what we want to achieve. We, of course, want to have everyone should be equal and equal participation and so on. So we need to talk about this together. And for instance, the feminist government and the policies we do, that's of course also to raise awareness of men, because men also live in stereotypes, right, like women live in stereotypes. And I'm sure there are a lot of men who would like to maybe be in sectors that are more female, or where today there are more females. So I think it's in a way about liberating all of us to be whoever we are and want to work in whatever sector we want, that it's not, I mean, maybe there should be lots more male nurses or lots more male kindergarten teachers, which we don't see today. The teacher in Sweden, teachers are mostly women. That's not good. So I think it's about liberating us all in a way. It sounds maybe superficial, but that is really the end state. So yeah, I think you're onto something.
I would say to your question, like a big, huge yes. Meaning you cannot get there by just women helping women. You must have the support of the male colleagues, the male leaders. Without it, we might make some success, but without having an endorsed support, I don't just mean I support it, I mean engagement in the effort and in the initiative and attention. It's a priority, and it's not just the woman's priority, it's our priority. I think it's an imperative to success.
Yeah, I think that's right. And just from the Council's perspective, we started a Women Global Development Forum about 10 years ago. And I remember, actually, we had a princess from Saudi Arabia came for a program, and I got a phone call from our then chairman's office, like, am I allowed to attend this event? He was a man. I'm like, you're absolutely allowed to attend. But we reconstituted our group around that and made sure it was 50% men and they participated. It wasn't just they approved. They came, they moderated stuff, and it made all the difference for how people engage it. Thanks, Justin. Next question, please. Right over there. Oh, look, we'll keep with the 100% men in the questions, so that's good.
So it's fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is for Laura, but anyone else would like to comment as well. I'm from UL, David Roth, and we're a science-based organization. And I was picked up on the women in leadership because they haven't been engaged in STEM previously. So I guess my question for the panelists would be, what are ways that more women can become involved in STEM? And how can we encourage young women to take that career path?
I think for us at our company, I mean, the women in STEM issue, the lagging of women in STEM is more of a societal issue. It's not a pharma issue or a tech issue. It's a societal issue. And one of the things that we do is we purposefully go out in our philanthropic arm and try to find and support STEM-based programs for women to try to get that encouragement at, you know, the middle school level, because by the time you're in high school, you sort of think I'm good at math or I'm bad at math. But by the time you're, you know, late elementary, you know, early middle school, you're still trying to figure out what you're good at. So we try to support a number of different programs out there in the communities to try to encourage more support and more engagement of women very early on in STEM.
Yeah, that's right. The earlier, the better. You're going to hear from Mimi Huang later today, and she was talking about that at our dinner last night, getting the architecture into them early so that they think of it as a possibility.
Yeah. I just wanted to add a quick example that I've practiced back home during my tenure as a mayor. We've managed to establish a makerspace, a first of its kind in the Balkans, in Jakova. There was this philanthrop that wanted to contribute to the hometown of his father, and we, as a municipality, gave the building. And this was all about technology, mechanics, and there was a special focus on girls as well. So there was a program, an opening, but they had to have 50-50 girls and boys. And we had amazing results of having girls from primary school and high school who were intending before to go to law school or economics, and then immediately they switched to construction, IT, programming. And you realize that if you're talking about the age of 18 or 20, it might be late to engage women in STEM programs. You have to start at primary school. You have to start on exposing women to technology and to different branches of sciences that normally they don't get sort of the orientation to go at that age.
So unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But before we close it out and thank our panel, I'd like to leave you with the thought that you notice we have sister cities and not brother cities. So I think on the city level, cities are inherently feminine. So I'm so glad we got to talk about it. Please join me in thanking our panel.
Thank you.